this is David Wheatley, and this is David Wheatley's podcast, episode 17. We are well into double digits now. To the numerologists out there, if you add 1 and 7 together, you get 8. When you divide by 4, you get 2. And when you multiply by 4 again, it goes back to 8. When you subtract 1, you get 7. And then 1 and 7 make 17. That's called reverse numerology. It's a new field of study just invented here. So the people around me are going, oh boy, okay. All right, so we're underway. The theme of the podcast is gradually emerging. After 16 episodes, it seems to have something to do with music and social psychology, plus some random tangents. But I like to think there aren't tangents, they're just thought patterns that lead us in different directions. Thank you very much. Because the implication is that a tangent is somehow not relevant. But as we know, everything is connected. Today's topic is, I've just decided 3 seconds ago, is about musicians. And that most musicians start playing their instruments when they're little kids. They either see a relative playing one or see somebody on TV, or somebody hands them one and says, this is the instrument you're going to play. And if the kid doesn't rebel too much, that's the instrument the kid plays. Ideally, the instrument will fit the kid, and I'm going to start saying child to be more respectful and more formal, because this is, in fact, a formal podcast. The child has an identification with the personality of the instrument. To be stating the obvious, an outgoing child will often play a trumpet or play the drums. This isn't an instrument, except the voice is the instrument. They might become a lead singer in a band or a soloist in the classical repertoire. And more introspective individuals, the thoughtful types, become classically, that's classic in a sense of often, an oboist or a violinist, or especially a violist, a French hornist, cellist. Pianists, of course, such as myself, are at an entirely another level, and in another realm, because we can play everybody's note at the same time. Many of the other instrumentalists are restricted to, or rather have chosen to specialize in playing one note at a time. And it helps to have a parent or a close relative who will be the encourager. This is often disparagingly referred to as a cheerleader, because I think everybody wants to have a cheerleader in their life. And the idea of providing one for somebody else, even a child, and not getting one themselves is not a particularly happy thought. So if the child has a cheerleader, this is very, very good. The cheerleader should avoid the practice that I've heard about in psychology called a bouquet and a brick. The bouquet is when the cheerleader gives a compliment like, well, you sure played that piece fantastically. And the brick is, but you really ought to work on that cadence. I thought it was a bit rushed. So the theory is that as the recipient of the bouquet, the compliment, is receiving it, they have this anxiety that the other foot will fall, to mix metaphors here, and that the brick will arrive in the form of a criticism. Which leads us very deftly into something I might already have talked about, which is criticism theory. This is not criticism theory like they might teach at a university, where you learn how to write reviews of concerts or movies or TV shows. This is a different kind. This is the kind where a person might say something to a musician like, well, I really don't like Beethoven. Maybe that would be one. Especially after the musician has just played Beethoven that took 100 hours to learn. The person might say that. They might say that because they're trying to reduce the dissonance, the cognitive dissonance in their lives created by not liking Beethoven for whatever reason and having to listen to Beethoven in the preceding concert. So that anxiety needs to be reduced. And one of the ways to do that is to direct it at the person responsible for the Beethoven, usually the artist, by going up backstage afterwards and say, wow, I really don't like Beethoven. I really didn't like that Beethoven. And the intelligent recipient of criticism, it's incumbent upon this person to translate that criticism into something else. And I visualize all the people at the United Nations who wear headphones that translate languages from one into another. The recipient, bless you, the recipient needs to have translation ability on the spot. So when the criticism comes in, oh, I really didn't like that Beethoven, to translate that into something like, this is internally, the recipient needs to think, what this person is saying in addition to that is, I wish you would play music by composers that I prefer, that I like, that make me feel really good. So that's the translation. And then the next step is to convert it into a request, where the critic then says, hey, is there any chance at the next concert you could play some, and fill in the blanks, Mozart, Schubert, Hindemith, Stravinsky, some of your original material, and ask it in a gentle way so it's not in my face, but gentle enough that I can say, come up with some sort of answer that doesn't put me on the spot or takes me off the spot, such as, yeah, that's an interesting idea. I'll think about it. So ideally, the critic, as they're having these sensations out in the audience, comes up and delivers the bouquet. That was really, really great. And maybe make a comparison by saying, it would be even greater for me, make it specific, if you could play some music by Stravinsky, Bartok. Would you ever consider that? With the word ever in there. And then the recipient gets to say just what I said. Well, that's an interesting idea. I'm going to think about it. Thank you for that. And that concludes that exchange. Ideally, the person puts another bouquet at the end. But it was really fantastic. I'm so glad I came to it. Keep up the good work. Can't wait to hear what's next. So I'm actually, as I think about it, giving lessons on how to compliment artists. And not just musicians. There's a whole range. In fact, it applies to everybody in the world. There is another category, and these are people who say the word is too long. There is another category of people who withhold bouquets, who withhold compliments in order to increase the demand. Remember Adam Smith and the Wealth of Nations and the law of supply and demand. And as the supply goes down, like supply chain interruptions we've been having, that then the demand for the available supply goes up and the price of everything goes up. So it's conceivable that an individual who has the power to deliver a compliment, such as somebody in a position of power, I'll just give a couple obvious names, teachers, politicians, celebrities, authority figures in the family, that these people have desirable compliments within them. I have come across situations where that individual will withhold these compliments to increase their value so that they, quote, mean something, unquote. I think this is a form of child abuse to withhold these, and I think they need to be delivered plentifully and often with great excitement and enthusiasm and truthfulness. And to have the faith that the complimenter will have the faith that this compliment will spur, that's probably a bad word for animal rights, but let's say inspire the person to do more and to build from where they already have come in order to receive the additional compliments and praise, which is a reward. And in the arts, because the valuation of the work is so vague, we've heard the phrase, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, or in the case of music, the ear and eye of the beholder. That there's so much range that often the artist doesn't know the value of their own work. And that's why they underprice, or in extremely rare instances, overprice, but they underprice their work and end up struggling to pay bills. And their profession vocation and avocation becomes a burden rather than a joy, just to oversimplify. Remember that guy on the sidewalk? Is he breathing or not? So I encourage people to be generous with their praise and compliments. And backstage, don't turn it into an essay, just something short, because there are other people who want to come in and deliver theirs and feel good about having done something really beautiful for somebody who just did something really beautiful, like playing this concert or recital. I wonder if these podcasts are going to segue into a list of guideposts and rules for audience members. Very curious to see if that happens. In the meantime, and until then, I hope you enjoyed this part and that you appreciate the sometimes meandering, always meandering thought process that goes into creating them. I thank the people that have helped create them, whose names appear on the screen either at the beginning or at the end of the podcast, and that you'll send them good wishes through the airwaves for their talents and value them very, very high, as I do. So this concludes episode number 1 + 7 = 17 in this form of math. You're welcome to send me an email, davidwheatley10@gmail.com. Compliments and bouquets, hey, fine. And what else? Patreon, yes. Patron of the Arts. This is a great opportunity to help further the work. And with that, I give you my great thanks, blessings, and well wishes. And that's all for now.